Yo, what's up everybody? We got more draft grades coming at you here. Let me first repeat the ground rules though. Number one, I am grading on somewhat of a stingy scale here, not unlike my Madden roster. I want grades and ratings at the top, the A grades, to really set themselves apart so you can see what picks I really loved. So I don't want to see any comments accusing me of sleeping or hating on players because I gave them a C grade. A C here basically means I thought the pick was solid. I was fine with it. And then the other rule, obviously, everyone has their own opinions, and I respect all of your opinions about these players and where they should have gone, but I'm judging value here off of my own draft board, so not necessarily where the mass majority of you may have had them. So you will see under each player's name where I valued each player heading into the draft. So we have the NFC East here, and I thought all of these teams had really good drafts. The NFC just continues to get more and more competitive. I think every team in the NFC is really well run. I think most of these front offices have a good grasp of what they want to do with their teams and are heading in the right direction. And that, again, really is what these draft grades are all about, is seeing where these teams want to go and me assessing if I think they got the value to do what they wanted to do. So let's start off with Dallas here. They kick it off in the first round with a pick that I didn't love. I was kind of saying before the entire draft started that Leighton Vander Esch was getting a little too overvalued. You know, he was a third or fourth round pick on my board before a really good workout at the combine. I think his tape is a little overstated. It was fine. He was definitely a hybrid player. He played a lot of cover linebacker in his last year, but I didn't see a lot of quick recognition and taking off and taking advantage of that physical ability. He needs to play to his size and play to his speed. I think Sean Lee is going to be healthy for him to learn how to do that, but I consider him more on the side of project right now than I do on impact defender in the first round here. Still not a bad pick by any means. And then in the second round, we got Connor Williams here. Offensive tackle, offensive guard, whatever he ends up playing. Out of Texas, Cowboys fan, emotional pick for Connor. And I actually thought Connor Williams might have been a good pick in the first round for Dallas. So this was one of the better picks in the draft here. I'm not sure if he's going to play right tackle or left guard. Lyle Collins really struggled at tackle, but was a good guard. So I have a feeling they're going to go with Williams at right tackle. I thought it was smart to get back to what this team does well. They have a good roster, but after 2016, they lost some talent on that offensive line and were clearly not the same. Obviously, Zeke was out, but even when Zeke was playing, this team did not have the same dominance on that offensive side of the ball, that punch you in the mouth mentality. This is definitely a step towards getting that back. And then in the third round, they get a really, really good receiver here in Michael Gallup. I liken him to Stephon Diggs. Outstanding with the ball in his hands. He's very strong and fast. He's like 6 feet, 205, something like that. Ideal size for kind of that possession receiver, in my opinion. Maybe not a true number one guy, but I think he could definitely be the best receiver on this team right away. And you get him in the third round. And then in the fourth round, really like this pick. Dorrance Armstrong, a high upside edge rusher. It's just a luxury pick for Dallas at this point, because between Taco Charlton and the absolute breakout of DeMarcus Lawrence, this Cowboys team actually has a foundational edge rush right now to build this defense around. And now you get a third guy here. He's a little bit of a developmental guy, but Armstrong has gained a ton of weight every year. He was like 225 pounds his freshman year. I believe he's a true junior coming out, and now he's up to about 260. He could even put on another 5 pounds. He doesn't need to, but it's a perfect scheme fit. Great value for Dallas here, and I will always applaud teams for getting a good edge rusher in the mid rounds. Pick 137 in the fourth round, they take Dalton Schultz, who probably would have been a B grade, except I just have a really good feeling about this pick. Watching his game, I thought Jason Witten immediately. Cowboys fans are going to make fun of me for saying, how dare you say a fourth round tight end could be Jason Witten, but let's be honest, Jason Witten was not an elite tight end. He's a Cowboys Hall of Famer and an outstanding player. Was never really a dominant receiving threat, not really a versatile receiving threat. He's a third down machine, which I think Dalton Schultz could definitely be, and just an okay blocker, which I think is Dalton Schultz. And by the way, Jason Witten retired a couple days ago. So I thought this was a perfect pick here, considering Jason Witten retires in the middle of the draft here. I'm sure Dallas had an idea that that was coming, but still, to immediately replace Jason Witten there with this pick, I thought was just awesome. And then in the 5th round, didn't love this pick with Luke Falk still on the board, a quarterback I was incredibly high on apparently. And a 2nd round grade on Luke Falk. I don't really know how you go Mike White, who is basically just a big arm here in the 5th round. And then 6th round, they take a linebacker here. Definitely needed some depth there. Chris Covington's going to make an impact on special teams, probably only going to play in the event of injury. Not really a high upside guy, but could absolutely make an impact on special teams, which is a lot of times what you're looking for here, day 3. And then at 208, loved this pick, had this on my best picks video, Cedric Wilson. At a 3rd, 4th round grade on the Boise State wideout, goes to Dallas, who's going to need some of these receivers to step up. So, you've got some talent in this draft now with Cedric Wilson and Gallup, who both have, I think, the upside of a number 1 receiver. You got Allen Hurns, still got Terrence Williams there. Definitely starting to fill out that wide receiver depth chart on the outside much better than they have in the recent years here. And then in the 7th round, somehow Bo Scarborough is still sitting there. Now, Bo, we know what he is. He's a bruising back. I compare him to LeGarrette Blount. Not really going to make a huge impact in the pass game. Not really a great pass blocker, but 3rd and short, especially. The reason this pick gets an A here, you pair Bo Scarborough with that size, that speed, 3rd and short with this offensive line, it's going to be really hard to stop him if you need to play him. I mean, you got Zeke, but this team needed a number 2 running back, and they got a really good, big, fast freak athlete here in Bo Scarborough. He's not Derrick Henry, but I don't think he's 5 rounds later worse than Derrick Henry, if that makes sense. So I gave the Cowboys an A. I thought it was just a really solid draft. Don't forget about this Cowboys team in the NFC this year. I'm sure the media isn't going to let us forget about them, but they are definitely in contention in the NFC. I think that defense is going to sneak up on some people as well. So then we got the Giants here. Not a lot of picks for the Giants, but they go Saquon with the 2nd overall pick. I was pretty harsh on this pick in my initial reaction. The more I let it sit, it makes sense. He's a can't-miss prospect. They want a guy to be the new face here, and they have Eli Manning. They might not have wanted to take that risk with a quarterback here. Now, the reason I didn't give this an A is because I think that was a mistake. I think Sam Darnold falling past number 1 made this a no-brainer pick for the Giants to get your future quarterback. I don't know, now that you have Saquon Barkley, I think this team's going to compete. They're going to be picking 10 to 15, so they're at risk of literally becoming the Arizona Cardinals here. Carson Palmer retires and they don't have a quarterback. They have the elite running back with David Johnson, but they were in purgatory for a little bit there until they trade up after Josh Rosen falls. But I'm going to be honest, that was pretty lucky to be able to get Josh Rosen at 10. There's no guarantee at all that the Giants are going to have an opportunity to get a quarterback down the road. But Saquon's going to come in, and then you get Will Hernandez in the 2nd round. And the second they made that pick, really swung my opinion on taking Saquon Barkley, because I have shredded this team for neglecting the offensive line and just focusing on skill players. They don't draft a single receiver in this class. So props to the Giants. They also don't seem to be interested in Dez Bryant. They clearly are admitting their mistake here of focusing too much on the icing on the cake in receivers and not the girth of this team. This entire draft was focused on getting back to old school football, which every other team in your division is damn good at. We'll talk about why I think the Redskins are as well here in a minute. But I don't really need to explain why Will Hernandez is a great pick. He was the best run blocker in this class outside of Quentin Nelson. Then the 3rd round, they get an edge rusher who's actually a pretty similar guy to like Jason Pierre-Paul. I compare him to Leonard Floyd, freak athlete out of Georgia. I would have took him in the middle of the 1st round. I really do think that highly of him. It's not just a raw prospect here. He is surprisingly good at getting leverage considering how long he is, which is really impressive. He has great bend, a ton of upside here. It's perfect because this team is switching to a 3-4 scheme where he will be much more comfortable as a stand-up outside linebacker. Amazing pick here for the Giants. Really good first 3 picks here. And then in their second pick here in the 3rd round, they took BJ Hill, who's a really athletic kind of nose tackle, but I think he benefited from playing on a loaded defensive line, and he didn't honestly do as much as I thought he could have given his athleticism. So I didn't love this pick, but they do get another good lineman here. Not going to shred that. And then the 4th round here, they take Kyle Lauletta. Probably would have normally been a C for me here, just an okay pick. I'm not nearly as high on Lauletta. I think he's Josh McCown. I think he's a career backup and a guy that could start in year 1 given an injury and kind of hold things together, but I don't see any kind of upside for a franchise quarterback in Kyle Lauletta. But the Giants need a backup quarterback here. Eli Manning has been one of the 5 worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 3 or 4 years. He got benched last year, so I don't think he'll get benched again, but I wouldn't completely rule it out. But he's older. Never know if injuries are going to happen. This was just a position they needed because I really don't think Davis Webb is ready. But this just kind of boosts up that quarterback room, gets a smart mind in there, which is never a bad thing at that position. And then their last pick here, 5th round, was a great pick. RJ McIntosh out of Miami. Super athletic, do-it-all interior lineman. Ideal size for me for a 4-3 interior guy. So he's going to play like a 3-4 end here, 3 technique. So really good D-line here and a really good front 7 in general. And they got a ton of value here in the 5th round. So overall, really liked this Giants draft. Getting back to old school football, got a ton of value to do it. A- grade. And then the Eagles, really quiet draft here, but the grades boosted here. I gave them a B because they used a lot of picks they should have had here to get pieces that really contributed to a Super Bowl. This probably would have been about a C if you're just looking at the draft, but if you look at what the other picks went towards, well worth it. So in the 2nd round, they take Dallas Goedert. My guess is just he was the best player on their board. They don't have literally any holes on this entire team. They have a few needs with depth, which tight end is one of those. But I think this team really in this draft was looking down the road of what positions they're going to have to pay, potential players they're going to want to let leave because they have so much talent. Eventually, the cap's going to catch up with them, just like we've seen with other great teams like this. So a pick like Dallas Goedert, maybe they're saying, okay, Ertz has been a really good player for us, but he's going to be asking for a lot of money. I'm not even sure when his contract is up, to be honest, but they're saying, okay, we'll get Goddard. He can block as our tight end 2 right away, play in a pinch, and then down the road, he'll be our guy. So that was a really good pick here, definitely their best pick in this draft. And then you got to go down to the 4th round here. They took Avonte Maddox, local guy, nickel corner. So they lost Patrick Robinson, who was one of the best nickel corners in the league last year, so they have a hole there. This secondary is definitely the weakest part of this team. Maddox, a 5'9", super instinctive guy. There were other nickel corners that I like better here. I thought this was a really loaded class of nickel corners, but this is clearly a guy they like. I thought it was a good pick, a guy that could potentially see a lot of playing time in his first year. And then pick 130, I was not a huge Josh Sweat guy, but this is the perfect landing spot, perfect scheme fit in that Jim Schwartz defense. Sweat's just one of the most raw but athletic pass rushers in this class. Has some injury questions as well. So I didn't love Josh Sweat coming in. I see the upside for sure, but great landing spot here. A really good D-line. He's barely going to play in the first year, but I think they're okay with that. And then they round out the draft with a couple of linemen there who will, compete for roster spots on this really good offensive line. So again, a B here, a pretty quiet draft for the Eagles, but they got their Super Bowl and gave up a lot of picks in this class to get key pieces. So I don't think there's a lot of Eagles fans complaining right now. And then the Washington Redskins here, I've been really excited to talk about this Redskins draft here that has stunningly gotten me fired up. If you would have told me when the Redskins went and traded for Alex Smith that in about a month I would all of a sudden become one of the bigger Redskins advocates for a surprise season in 2018, I would have laughed in your face. But I love the direction that this team is going. Now, they had a sneakily physical defense last year. They had some injuries, but when they had Jonathan Allen, their first-round pick, going with Ioannidis on that front, Zach Brown will punch you in the mouth. Got DJ Swearinger. I love Josh Norman. They just got nasty dudes. They signed Pernell McPhee. So I've been saying for a while, this defense is going to sneak up on some people and just no one's going to want to play them because they're tough and gritty. Outdoor football, NFC East, I love it. But they were missing that element on the offensive side of the ball. And there's one pick here that I think really helped that. So let's talk about this here. They take Daron Payne in the first. They pass on what was a really good option, but more of a flashy pick with Derwin James. I think would have been a really good pick here as well, and I would have been potentially even more fired up if that was the pick. But Daron Payne was a big need for this team. They've got two really good interior linemen, in my opinion, with Matthew Ioannidis and Daron Payne, but they could really use a third, Jonathan Allen, who was Daron Payne's teammate a year ago at Alabama. Identical player here, Daron Payne. Polished interior guy right away. Above average athlete, not an outstanding athlete, but just a baller. So that D-line is set and ready to go. They're going to be tough to block up front. And then they got a bunch of speed and tough guys behind that after those blocks are eaten up. So I like what this defense is going to do. They made more good picks that we'll talk about in a second. But then the second round, they take Darius Geis at a value here at the end of the second round. A pissed off Darius Geis after a bunch of running backs went before him. And now you've got an identity on this offense. And that identity is the exact same thing that you have on the defensive side of the ball. Tough and gritty. This is an underrated offensive line. Trent Williams still might be the best left tackle in football and battled injuries all year last year. Brandon Sheriff, no defensive lineman wants to go against him. They took another good tackle here in the third. A bit of a project, but a really good athletic, tough guy in Jerron Christian, who I would think is going to start somewhere on this line, whether it's guard or tackle. I still got Morgan Moses, who's a good right tackle. Alex Smith is going to take care of the football. His mobility complements the run game much more than Kirk Cousins did because defenses have to put a body on Alex Smith and the rollout game a lot more. So, this Redskins team, well, let's wait till we get through the rest of this draft. We'll talk about my expectations for this team. In the fourth round, they took one of my favorite players in the class, Troy Apke, at the safety position. His tape is not bad. A lot of people said big project pick here. I don't think so. He showed a lot of really nice flashes at Penn State. I watched a lot of that team last year. I think Troy Apke is a starting safety for this team right away. Could be one of the biggest steals in this whole class. And then the fifth round, another huge steal, Tim Settle. A lot of his game reminded me of like B.J. Raji or even at times Vince Wilfork. He has the same exact body mold of Wilfork. That awkward, like tiny ankle build, but a huge top. I don't know if any of you guys have really looked at a picture of Vince Wilfork like that, but he's just a weird looking dude. But I think those small legs lead to an almost unnatural level of quickness for a guy his size. He gets off the ball incredibly fast. He can push the pocket as a pass rusher, but will also eat up blocks and run defense. So this team got two really good defensive linemen to beef up a front seven that I think is extremely underrated. And then in the sixth round, they take Sean Dion Hamilton, decent pick, undersized linebacker. I think he's probably just a special teamer, but could get involved. We'll see. And then seventh round, another special teams pick, Greg Stroman. A little bit of upside as a corner, but I really think this was sort of a culture fit pick here, a guy who's going to cover kicks, potential gunner on kickoffs, that kind of thing. I think he returned kicks as well. And then 256, Trey Quinn is a great value here. They have Jamison Crowder in the slot as a really good slot guy, but Trey Quinn is basically just going to be there if anything happens to Crowder and is going to be able to play right away as a slot receiver here. So I love this draft. I was already leaning towards the Redskins being a sleeper team. The only thing is they're in the NFC. There really isn't a bad team in this conference, guys. If the Redskins were in the AFC, I would be almost as crazy as to pick them to be in the AFC Championship because of that conference. But I'm not going to be ready to go there in the NFC. They're still probably the third best team in their own division here. But we'll see if I'm right, because I really like how they're putting this team together. Everything makes a ton of sense, and that seems to be when teams sneak up on people. Not when they go with the flashy picks, but when they really commit to one thing and get a ton of value in doing so. And I thought they nailed this draft. Potentially my favorite draft of any team in the NFL. So that's the NFC East. We're going to do the NFC South next. Keep going through this crowded NFC. Like the video if you enjoyed the content, guys. Do check out my Twitter at TFG_football. Ton of good draft talk there, along with any and all NFL. So we'll see you guys soon for the NFC South. Cheers.